everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Irreverent Therapists. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Pam Hodling. Yahoo! And we're here to give you some slightly different perspectives on things. So today's show is called, Does Parenting Have You Tied Up in Knots? There's so much expert advice out there. Gentle parenting, free-range parenting, permissive parenting, elephant parenting, helicopter parenting, mindful parenting. There's so much expert advice out there about parenting that it can keep parents confused and doubting themselves. What if you could access a knowing of what's right for you and your kids? What if you could become the expert for your family and your parenting?
I have to say, this just brings back memories because as soon as I knew I was pregnant the first time, my husband and I, we were reading books, we were having conversations, and there's so much advice and you so want to get it right. Like, this is the thing in your life you don't want to mess up and you don't want to get wrong. And you're like, oh, if I pick the wrong one, my child's going to be scarred for life. So to me, parenting is full of significance and judgment. And
Yes.
I should say parenting the way it's presented in the everyday reality is full of judgment and significance. And you're constantly judging yourself about, did you choose the right way? Are you implementing that way correctly?
Oh, wow.
So I'm so glad that I found the tools of access consciousness when my kids were still quite young. I think they were about 6 and 8, but I do wish I'd had them when they were very young. It would have made things so much easier.
Well, what tools did you begin using that changed things for you?
Well, okay, so a big one, and there's different tools, but to me, they all go together in a package.
Absolutely.
Like the first 2 tools of access that I was introduced to were who does this belong to? And that's the idea that you're very aware and you're aware of other people's stuff, not just your own.
Right.
And so as an example with what we're talking about, there's whatever my own, worries and concerns or whatever about parenting were, but then it's like you're tapping into everyone who's in the same space or has a similar type of energy, even if it's about something other than parenting, and then you're getting together with your parenting group and you all have babies and you're all talking about how you're doing things. And, it's like you reinforce for each other how important this is and stuff. But so who does this belong to? And then there's something called the Access Consciousness Clearing Statement, which is, it's a collection of words that together create an energetic to clear out your judgments and your points of view. So I find, both of those are helpful, but then really asking questions and trusting that I know what I know.
Yes, that's so huge.
Yeah.
I have not been a parent of a humanoid child. I do have cats.
Well, you don't just have cats. You're a parent of feline children.
Thank you. I'm a parent of feline children. And I remember calling Pam when they were quite young and saying, Snow Kitty's driving me crazy. I don't know what to do. And she said, you can't put her in the cat room. Now, the cat room has a cat tree. It has everything a cat needs. I can? It's like timeout for kitties. Oh, and what that showed me, and I think this is one of the things that I was also a psychotherapist for like a godzillion years, and I did work with parents and families. But it showed me you have to be in the computation of the arrangements with your children. You can't just, of course, if they're running out in the street or they're sick, there's obviously there are times when they're completely first. However, if you don't allow yourself to be included in the kingdom of we, what's going to work for everyone? What's going to be the greatest good here? Then you're going to be in a lot of trouble, not just with the kids, but your life is going to disappear down the drain.
Well, you know what that makes me think of is a couple of things. So one is it's kind of like there's two extremes, and I'm maybe more than two extremes, but an extreme is everything's about my kids. Like
Yes.
my whole life is about my
Yes.
kids. They come
Yes.
first. I know people who've had hardly any, like their relationships with other people died because everything's so about their kids.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there's the people who have kids as, some kind of proof of their value. And, it's really all about me, but the kids are helping everything be about me.
The narcissist, the kids revolve around me.
Yeah, everything revolves around me. And my kids are only here to serve, my purpose in life or whatever that might be. And it's a completely different thing to say, okay, here's some amazing beings that happen to be part of my life. Yes, I'm an older, bigger, grown up, being that's there with them. So there's things I can do they can't. But, what I love what you said, what works for all of us.
Yeah.
Like you need to, as a parent, it's required that there's times where you say, no. Like,
You're
this
going
is
to
how we're doing it. Because I know in the bigger picture of things, this is what's going to work. So you're not making it all about whatever they want, they can have, but also you're there, you're in the picture. It has to work for you too.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of stories about kids, and Access has had some amazing conversations and classes about kids and parenting. But one of the stories I really like was from Gary Douglas, the founder of Access. And he was talking about when his daughter was young and she was approaching a hot stove. And he didn't say, don't do that. He said, if you touch that, you will burn yourself. In other words, he gave the child choice
and information.
And I think that's really a key to great parenting, is giving the child choice and information. One of the things it does is it allows them to become empowered to actually make choices in their life. It's not about do that, don't do that. That really does not, except in obviously extreme circumstances, help children.
Yeah. Well, if somebody's always telling you exactly what to do and how to do it, and don't even try to do something because you might get hurt, then when you grow up, you're looking for someone to tell you what to do.
Yes, you're never going to be independent.
You haven't learned that to trust your own awareness,
right,
to ask your own questions, and to see what you know.
And I think one of the other mistakes I've seen, and I call it a mistake, and that's my judgment. I was working with a couple fairly long term. Initially, it was about his drinking, but it just became kind of a family thing. And these were very, what you would call kind people, upstanding people, desired the best. These were not flaky people in any way. But one of the children was not doing well in school, and there was a lot of punishment. We're going to take this away if you don't make these grades. And I said to the dad, have you ever asked them what they're interested in? And he said, well, aren't we as parents supposed to impose our values and belief systems on our children? And I'm like, well, how well is that working? But it was a totally new concept to him to ask the child what worked for them. What are you interested in? And what would you like to do? And what's going on in school? And that kind of thing. So I think if parents unilaterally just impose their values, their belief systems on their children, the children never get to be themselves, and they don't know who they are.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, your values, your belief systems, they're going to be aware of them and taking them in, whether
Anything.
you're specifically saying them or not.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
in fact, you said in the description, what if you could become the expert for your family? Like,
Yes.
the thing is, if you're not looking for the way to do it, or I must teach them this, this, and this,
Mhm.
if you're actually in question, what's going to work here? What
Yeah.
am I aware of? What would I like our family life to be like? Asking them, what would you like our family life to be like?
Yes.
So you can find what is working for you and your unique family that might be different than everybody else.
Yeah.
But you're also demonstrating to them that they can live that way too.
Because every being is different.
Yeah.
You might have one very shy, introverted child and another outgoing child who's artistic or athletic or an adventurer, who wants to climb Mount Everest at age 10 or whatever. But if you try to put them in a box, you really squelch their individuality and their lives.
Yeah. And, another thing, so often, we grow up in our families, we're like, I'm never doing that.
Yeah.
That didn't work for me. I'm going to do it different when I'm parenting. And basically, you're in reaction
Yes.
to your own parent, how
Yes.
you were parented.
Yes.
And if you go more from the question and looking at what gets created, okay, I'm going to choose this. Let's see how that goes. Now I'm going to choose this. Let's see how that goes. You can actually choose to create something different
Yes.
than your family of origin that isn't coming from reacting to them, because that almost kind of recreates the other side of the same coin when you're
Yes.
trying to not be what your parents were. Whereas if you're truly asking questions and in the moment, choosing what you're aware of and what your other family members are aware of and what works for you guys, then you, without even trying to, you're changing those patterns that you grew up with.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And just be aware, kids are the greatest, most amazing manipulators in the world. They have to be. They're powerless about all kinds of things. But I remember, Pam, you telling me once that your son had a tantrum when you said you were leaving on a trip. And you were like, have fun with that. Dad's here. And I mean, it wasn't related to anything in specific, except
Right.
he was trying to manipulate you into staying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can tell them, I love you and I need to go on this trip.
Yep.
Or whatever it is.
So what if there's no right way? And again, from that space of you so want to do well by your kids.
Yes.
You start looking for a right way, but you can actually instead choose to function from, instead of trying to figure out what's the right way and am I doing what I'm doing right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a little example of that. When my kids were little, a lot of things we're talking about natural consequences, right? So if you're doing this, there's going to be a natural consequence. And I can remember just being like, did I come up with the right natural consequence? I would so tie myself up in knots trying to parent well and judging myself for not parenting well and all this stuff. So what if instead of all that, there could be space and ease and a willingness to be present with your kids, your family, and look at what's really working, what's not working, not from that means it's right or wrong, but just, is this actually how we want to be living our lives?
Yeah.
My husband and I, we used to have, we call it state of the marriage conversations. And it was, sometime when we had some space and we would just look at what we were creating together as our life.
Mm-hmm.
And what each of us would like to have more of or less of. And we did the same thing with parenting.
Cool.
So we just talk about how we were, what we were choosing and how we were going about things, and is it working? And, is there something we'd like to start adding in or changing about how we were with our kids?
Yeah. That's cool. Well, go forth and parent according to your own awareness.
Yeah. And I just want to say, if you're intrigued by this conversation, there's actually a whole specialty of access consciousness called Conscious Parents, Conscious Kids. And there's facilitators around the world who are facilitating classes with a lot of tools like what we've been talking about, to help you find your parenting style and what works for you and your family. So you can check that out at accessconsciousness.com. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.